Shalom. I'm Rabbi Michael Panitz. I'm the Rabbi of Temple Israel of Norfolk, Virginia, speaking to you from the pulpit of our synagogue. My message at this time is on the topic, Let Truth Spring Up from the Ground. This is a common condition. When we are in conflict with someone, a party we find detestable, it is particularly galling to have to acknowledge when that antagonist is right about anything. It is indeed a seductive temptation to agree with opinions we hear, or conversely, to disagree with them, based not on our analysis of those opinions, but rather on our estimation of the source. The Bible knows that liars can sound convincing with deleterious results. Psalm 120, verses 3 and 4. Adonai hatzila nafshi misifat sheker milashon remiyah. Lord, save my life from lying lips, from a tongue of deceit. What can it give you? What can it add, a tongue of deceit? A warrior's honed arrow with broomwood coals. But that is not the entire story. Our side does not have a monopoly on discovery and invention. People whom we regard as beyond our circle of shalom may uncover truths. As for truth itself, it can be expressed by all, owned fully by none. The Bible's most sustained presentation of the lesson that a compromised person may serve as a conduit for truth is the story of Bilaam, the Gentile seer, Numbers chapters 22 through 24. The biblical narrative oscillates between esteem and scorn for that prophet, a sign that there were several traditions about him jostling in the minds of our forebears. But people are indeed often complex. The prophet Bilam was faithful enough to the prophetic calling to caution all who sought to hire him that he would give voice to God's words, not the ones they wanted to put into his mouth. But he had another side, one that hoped that God's words would advance his own agenda. We do not condemn that human side when the prophet wishes for God to spare Israel. From Moses through Samuel, Amos, and Jeremiah, the Bible records that true prophets could both deliver harsh news and pray for God to soften the judgment. The rabbis do not, however, give Bilam a pass for his own human preferences because in their reading of the full set of biblical narratives involving the Israelites and the Midianites at the time of Bilam, they concluded that the prophet ultimately wished ill against our people. The Bible records that the Israelites killed Bilam, Numbers chapter 31, verse 8. And based on that text, the rabbis inferred, or shall we say claimed, that in addition to his prophecies, which were God's words, Bilam also gave his own advice on how the Midianites might defeat the Israelites. It is all the more remarkable, then, that despite their negative characterization of his overall character, the rabbis claim that Bilam was the only person in history to have equaled Moses in his level of prophetic ability. And this is from the Midrash Numbers Rabbah 14. Quote, when Moses came into the tent of meeting to speak with God, Numbers chapter 7, verse 89, it is taught, and this quote is Deuteronomy chapter 34:10, Lo kam beYisrael Kimoshe od Navi. There has not arisen another prophet in Israel like Moses. In Israel, one has not arisen, but among the nations of the world, he has arisen, so that there will not be recourse for the nations of the world to say, had we had a prophet like Moses, we would have worshipped the Holy Blessed One. What prophet did they have like Moses? This was Bilaam, son of Beor. The rabbis enumerated differences between Moses and Bilaam, but not differences in their basic level of ability. Each was at the pinnacle of what humans could achieve in the domain of prophecy. In expressing this startling evaluation, the rabbis were acknowledging the force of the Bible's own editorial position. The story of Bilaam represents a unique point of view. It is pro-Israel, but it has a different authorial stance than the rest of the book of Numbers. In their theories concerning the authorship of the books of the Bible, found in the Talmud, Tractate Bava Batra 14b, the rabbis list, quote, the book of Bilaam as a work by Moses separate from the Pentateuch. Moreover, another Talmudic discussion of the execution of Bilaam in Tractate Sanhedrin 106b mentions, quote, a notebook of Bilaam, a seeming reference to a work attributed to the Gentile prophet that circulated independently of the Torah. Such a book may well have existed, because in 1967, archaeologists discovered an inscription on a wall of an ancient temple in Jordan that contained a copy of the, quote, Book of Bilaam, words not found in the Bible. What was the truth that the Bible recorded as having come from God through the lips of Bilaam? Two historical predictions. First, oracles foreseeing the destruction of several of the pagan nations surrounding Israel, which were indeed all destroyed by the Assyrian Empire. And second, words of praise for the people Israel. Those words have endured in our national consciousness. The most famous line of Bilaam's prophecies is the book of Numbers 24, verse 5. Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Yisrael. How lovely are your tents, O Jacob, your dwelling places, O Israel. To this day, observant Jews recite those words upon entering a synagogue, and many synagogue worship services begin with a communal singing of that verse. The rabbis expressed their commitment to truth in a strikingly bold midrash. Commenting on Genesis chapter 1, verse 26, Na'aseh Adam b'tzalmenu, let us make a human in our image. The rabbis wondered about the plural, let us. They imagined God taking counsel with the angels. Some, such as the angels of the band known as Peace, agreed that humanity ought to be created. Others, including the angels of the band known as Truth, disagreed because humans have the propensity to lie. According to the Midrash, God in response threw the angels of the Truth Guild to the earth, leaving a temporary majority of the angels voting in favor of creating humanity. But the angels as a whole protested. They quoted the book of Psalms, chapter 85, number 12. Let truth spring up from the ground, they said, anticipating the words of that psalm. Then it will be reunited with angels of peace to fulfill the words of the preceding verse, truth and peace have kissed. Over the course of Jewish history, the most ringing endorsement of the rabbinic mandate to champion the truth, despite possible inconvenience, in acknowledging its proximate spokesperson, is from the greatest of Jewish philosophers, Moses Maimonides. One of his earlier works, Shmoneh Parakim, 8 chapters, is an ethical treatise in the form of a commentary on the Mishnah, Tractate Sanhedrin. In the introduction to that work, Maimonides wrote, quote, "Know that you must accept the truth, whatever its source." He was anticipating the question arising among his readership, that he was quoting with approval the findings of classical pagan philosophers, such as Aristotle. His response is in line with the rabbinic citation of Psalms. The truth has to be allowed to sprout its wings and fly. The issue of truth being acknowledged despite one's quarrels with its spokesman is never out of date. There are repeated examples of nations and other groups harming themselves by being too narrow-minded to acknowledge that truth can come from inconvenient sources. Under Stalin, the Soviet scientific establishment insisted on the truth of the loyal communist botanist Trofim Lysenko. His rejection of so-called capitalist genetics resulted in famines in the USSR and in communist China that claimed millions of victims. We have a dangerous parallel playing out in our country today. Did the recent US attack on Iranian nuclear facilities, quote, totally obliterate their nuclear capabilities, to use the word that our president and his loyal subordinates insist on? Or did it set them back by a measured but finite amount? Whatever the truth may be, using a partisan litmus test to privilege or discount information runs the risk of a profound political miscalculation with the potential for untold damage. Throughout the ages, many people have wished to cast truth to the ground and grind it into the dust. But as the rabbis say, truth is the signet ring of the eternal. A book can be banned or burned. An author can be imprisoned or executed. But if the words spoken or written are true, they will fly free from the burning parchment, the dying flesh, and call to generations present and future. When you are confronted by the truth, do the right thing. Amen.